Okay, so you're going to stitch from the outside or the inside out, coming out through this hole. And you're gonna go into the next hole there, and just make sure that you are catching your fabric on the inside. I've noticed as I've stitched some of these, I've not been catching the fabric, so I would have to basically take my stitching out and go back and redo it. And I'm going to go through the next stitch hole, and then it's basically going to be a similar process of how the upper row has been. So you're going to skip, and then when we do our quote-unquote back stitching, we will see how this is coming through and it's not hitting my fabric. When we come back and basically do our reverse stitching, that is when we will do the other sections that we're skipping right now. It will make sense. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, looking good. Wearing a thimble can help this process. If I still had my leather one, I would probably wear that. I only have a plastic one and I just feel like it's more of a pain than anything else, but definitely recommend it to kind of save your fingers. So at this point we've skipped every other stitch, so I'm going to come back through this hole here from the inside out and then go into the next hole. So let me get my thread out of the way. Come through here, pull my thread through, and then I'm going to go into this next hole. And like I said, just make sure you're catching that fabric on the inside. It's definitely easy to miss, especially in this bottom row. You're getting really close to the bottom edge of the fabric. So just make sure that you're hitting that, and just going to continue the same process for this bottom row. Definitely gonna have some built up grip strength after this hand stitching, it's no joke. And you are going to come through the next section and come back up to this first hole there. And then the one thing I'll say is be careful when you're pulling this down. You really want the stitch to sit in there. Sometimes if you start pulling it too tight, it doesn't actually sit in there nicely. So it's nice with the wax thread. You can kind of like mold it to where you want it to be. So with that being said, our bottom row is complete and we are ready to get the tongue panel and start getting this stitched inside of here. Okay, so at this point, our thread is coming into the inside of the shoe from our last stitch. So we are going to take our tongue and we are going to get this attached. So you're gonna come through. There's gonna be 2 points that you do for some secure stitching at the end. You're gonna ignore these and do the first top one here and get this pulled through. And then you're gonna come through this first hole here. Okay. So the one thing I will say about attaching the tongue is that this part gets a little dicey because you're really up in the toe area. It's a little tighter. So what I've done is when I've stitched this on, I usually do not tighten it at all until I'm attaching the second panel. Then I'll go back in and start to tighten up all my threads. So we're just going to continue the same process that we've been doing. And then you just want to leave a little bit of space. Knowing that we're going to be coming back and tightening it later. Okay, so right now my thread is coming in through the tongue. I am going to find my first hole here. And I am going to bring this through this first hole, and I'm going to try to tuck this in front of the tongue. Because we really want the tongue to sit inside of the actual panel itself, so the tongue is hidden behind that side panel. So I'm going to come through my second hole here. And these parts can get a little bit tricky when you're coming through a lot of fabric. Don't be afraid to use your stiletto when you need to, or just take your time, use the thimble. But I'm getting this other side panel attached, and I'm going to be able to go back and tighten my stitches that are in the toe area. So I'm going to come through and continue stitching like I have been. And at this point, once I pull this thread through, I'm going to pause and go back and start tightening up those tongue stitches. The easiest way that I've found to tighten these is to use that ballpoint needle, stick it underneath the thread, and start pulling that thread through each stitch slowly. And do it section by section, so you're not having to go through and go back. Just do one section at a time and continue pulling these through. And at this point, these can be a little bit hard to grab, so just take your time. And I do go back and look at the inside to make sure all of my stitches are laying flat and it's not getting caught on any fabric. And then I continue on pulling that thread through to get that fully tightened. And then just tightening this last section here and just pulling this through until I get back to the end of my stitch. So I'm going to continue stitching. I am going to ignore this bottom row for now, and when I come back to do my reverse stitching, we will make sure we hit this bottom row. So I'm just going to continue on until we get to my locking stitch on the other side. Okay, so now that I'm coming up on meeting my first stitch here, I am going to go through this first stitch that I initially made to basically finish this off. But now I'm going to reverse my stitches. So I'm going to go back into this hole and then into this hole and then kind of continue on until I get to this end point, which then I will go and back stitch this, come around and end here. Okay, so now that we are in the home stretch, we're gonna have to sew this bottom section because we didn't do this in the previous round of stitching. So I'm going to come through that first lower section, and like I said, when you're doing this part, just make sure you tuck that little thread in the little divot there. Perfect. And then it's going to be essentially the same as the other side that we did. Okay, so now that I've completed my last stitch to meet up kind of with my beginning stitch here, I'm gonna go back one stitch to just help lock this in. And I should have this left over. I'm going to trim this. You don't actually have to knot these. It's actually recommended that you burn them. So safety first. I have mine kind of long, so I'm gonna trim them just a little bit more. That way I'm not waiting for them to burn. And this one right here is pretty easy because it's in the front. This is really hard once your fingers are all tired from doing all this stitching. Probably be easier with a match. And then do the other one in here. Okay, so now that that is complete, the only thing we have left to really do stitch wise is there's a securing stitch that they recommend that you do on the front here to the tongue, so it will keep like this. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So make sure you have those holes punched through. You should have some extra thread left over. You're going to come through the top hole, leave a little extra out, come through that bottom hole, and then you should see the other hole that you have marked here. That's actually on the side panel. So this is what it's looking like right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch this 3 times into that bottom hole on the tongue. and just make sure you get this tightened up. And then you can continue this process one more time. And once you're happy with this, you can go ahead and trim this. Tie this. I like to tie this one off. So go ahead and tie it. And then once you have this kind of tucked inside and tied, I'm going to do a double knot in here. You can go ahead and give this a good trim. And then you are going to do the same thing with the lighter as before. We're ready to finish up our shoe, so we can go ahead and get the insole inserted inside here. And we're ready to grab our laces and get this shoe laced up. So you can obviously lace your shoes however you like, personal preference. I'm just going to pretty much lace them standard way. I know you can get really crazy with how you can lace your shoes. I'm not gonna do that. Sticking with the classic way. So when I come to this part, I'm gonna tuck this under into my little tab. And then I can continue going through. I would say my laces are pretty flat. You can, you know, kind of go with whatever lace you want. This is just what I liked. So I'm just trying to keep them nice and flat and neat as much as I can. And you have a finished shoe. How fun is this? This is such a different project for me. And I just feel like it's such a cool way to take a quilted panel, take your favorite fabric, and really come up with something unique that you can talk about and show off. And, you know, you can do whatever you want, pick whatever fabric you want for whatever holiday. It doesn't even have to be holiday specific. But this is what my pair of quilted sneakers looks like. So I hope you've enjoyed this process. It's been really fun. Definitely something different to kind of bring me out of my normal quilting. So I really wanted to share it with you, and I hope that you guys like it, and I hope you give them a shot. The fun thing is that this company makes a couple of different kits, so different sole colors. You can get them in children's sizes. And then if you look at the patterns on their site, they have patterns for different styles of sneakers. So if you don't want to do a low cut sneaker, you definitely don't have to. There's multiple options on there, so I highly recommend checking it out. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to message me on social media. You can message me directly through my website, leave a comment below this video. I'll try to do my best to get everything answered. Otherwise, here they are.